A very warm good evening to everyone. I'm Dr. Jason Chu, a lecturer from Banking and Finance and the chairperson for our program today. Our objective is to give you clarity on how Monash Business School prepares postgraduate students for business careers in the post-COVID-19 economy. Now, the format of our showcase is an interactive three-way discussion between the presenters, the student panel, and yourself. So we very much look forward to receiving your questions. Please don't hesitate to ask by unmuting yourself. You can test unmuting. I think you press the space bar and that will automatically unmute yourself, and ask at any time, please. Or you can also type questions in chat. If you've never used Zoom before, it may take a little bit of while to familiarize yourself with all the different functions and features. In your Zoom, you'll notice a toolbar at the very bottom where you can mute or unmute and also chat as well too. So joining me in this discussion today is my co-presenter, Paul Nguyen. Go ahead,
Hi everyone,
Paul.
good to meet you.
And next, we're very lucky to have a panel of Monash Business School students who are here to share their experiences with you. And if you've got any questions to ask of their student experience, they're here to answer your questions. So I'll let them introduce themselves, and also importantly, they'll share their stories as to why they decided to join Monash University. Please go ahead. Matilda?
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming along. So nice to see such a big turnout. So I'm Matilda. I'm studying a double degree at Monash in business and arts. And the reason that I really chose, or what drew me to Monash over, well, for me, more so over Melbourne, I actually had a scholarship to go to Melbourne, and I chose to come to Monash instead because there was that opportunity to dive straight into the subjects or the topics of interest, and you were allowed to pick or follow your passions from the get-go. So that's really why I ended up at Monash, and I have absolutely loved it. I started in arts and then did a business subject as an elective, absolutely loved it, and then, as you can see, ended up doing a double degree following both of those and majoring in international business.
Thanks, Matilda.
Hi guys, Dhrit is Dhriti. I'm from Bachelor Student itself, and I'm originally from India. And currently I'm in my second year of business degree, where I'm majoring in banking and finance and business statistics. For me, I chose Monash over Melbourne Uni because of the very interesting programs that I found in Monash. Primarily, I saw the rankings, but after when I had a conversation with the alumni and the people who guided me, the kind of services that I found that Monash offers with their graduate employability and development of the soft skills was nowhere to be found.
Dirty, that's actually a very interesting question, everybody. And if you have any questions, please do ask. Paul and I are very much here just to facilitate the conversation and for you to get a good idea of the student experience, and no better people to ask than our current students. So Dirty, perhaps you could expand a little bit more about that student experience. I think you mentioned internships before as well too.
Definitely. So our Monash University has a special graduate development department wherein they coordinate along a lot of networking events where they ask the employers from different industries around the Australia to come and network along the students of Monash. So we get a chance to network along them, and they're not just that, there are the events where we just grow our skills. There was one specially themed event this semester was the LinkedIn Live, where our Career Connect staff help students develop their LinkedIn profile, and they help the students with growing their soft skills. They ask the students to get involved in more and more programs. And I remember there was one program named Industry and Alumni Mentoring Program, which I'm a part of. And as a mentee, I have an allocated mentor, and I have my set of goals that I ask my mentor to follow up on. So this is a great way that I found my soft skills and my employability skills to grow.
Well, thanks for that, Dirty. We actually have our very first question from the audience. Karan, are you there? You've got your hand raised, please. Go ahead.
Hi, Jason. How are you, first of all?
Hi, Karan. Very good, thanks. How are you about yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. So, Diti, just a quick question I had. As per coming from India, how was your experience overall in your degree and also that's the question for me.
Okay, so when I initially came to Australia, I mean, I did face a lot of struggles because I know that coming from India, we guys have to look for some part-time employments as well and have to manage our studies according to that. And it's very difficult for us to adapt to our study culture over here that we have in Australia from what we used to have back in India. So I would suggest getting to talk to your lecturers, talk to your tutors, not just in the class, but out of the classes, going to consultations, asking for help wherever you can, and making it an informal conversation with the tutor can really help a lot. I mean, that's what I did.
And you are currently passed out of the uni or
No, actually,
still studying?
I'm still a current student.
Okay, postgraduate student. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Diti.
You're welcome, Karan. And Dirty actually mentions a very interesting point. So Matilda and Dirty actually belong to a special staff student club. You may have heard of clubs. Students run a skiing club, a commerce club. But at Monash University, we've started the very first staff student club, and it's called Business School Broadcasting. So Matilda was our president last year of Business School Broadcasting. Dirty is our current vice president. And the reason why we started this club, Paul is the vice president, I'm the staff president. The reason why we started this club is because we wanted to provide mentoring opportunities where students could work with staff and they could feed back into their education. So for example, one of the programs we run is Student Financial News, where students can pick up a very interesting current trend in finance, could be marketing, could be management, and then they could create a little news presentation about it. And that news presentation will be vetted and guided by staff, and we'd actually use that as part of our curriculum. Another example is a new newsletter that students actually write and contribute articles. We edit, and that's actually used as part of the homework quizzes in some of the units in banking and finance. So in this particular way, we want to help our students recognize that your education is a very holistic education. You're not just passing unit after unit. We'd like to maximize engagement with students. And of course, one end is staff. We offer plenty of opportunities. So we reach out and we want to say to all our students, have a holistic idea of your education. It's not just about passing this unit and passing that unit. You're here to grow your sense of emotional maturity, your sense of self, your self-awareness. And this actually ties very strongly into what we're talking about tonight. If there are any other questions, please do ask. Please do ask. Thank you very much, Karan.
Jason, there's one or two in the chat.
Oh, great. Thanks.
Would you like me to read them out?
Yeah, please, Matilda, go ahead.
All right, we have question number one. Question is, hello, would like to know what are the internship opportunities during the Master of Banking and Finance at Monash University and the future career prospects in Australia?
Oh, that's a great question.
A very loaded question.
Very.
I can actually offer something here because I teach one of the core subjects in the Master of Banking and Finance. That's financial modeling. So in that subject, we teach students Excel and programming skills in order to help them use Excel models in order to solve financial problems. So that's the core tenet of what we teach. And all the Master of Banking and Finance students end up doing that subject. So I get to come across a lot of Master of Banking and Finance students at Monash. I would say that the future career prospects for a Master of Banking and Finance student is extremely broad. I know of past students who've gone on to do further study. So one of my past students is actually currently doing a PhD. And I also know students who've gone on in various forms of industry as well. So I know students who've gone on to careers at the big four banks, in investment banking, in management consulting, in technology consulting, as well as in private equity and all other sorts of very fancy careers. And a degree in Monash University, which is one of the highest rated universities in Australia, is viewed very favourably by all sorts of different employers. So there's boundless opportunities for graduates of a Masters of Banking and Finance. In terms of internships, this is really interesting because we actually had an opportunity for some of our international students to talk to hiring managers last semester when we had a Q&A session that Jason and I hosted, and we spoke with one of the hiring managers at one of Australia's biggest banks, as well as a recruitment agency, and we talked a lot about the internship opportunities available for international students. It's always very difficult because with an international student visa, there are certain regulations on how much you're able to work, which I'm not too familiar with because I'm not an immigration lawyer, but there are certain regulations. But even within those certain regulations, there are a lot of internship opportunities for international students and targeted specifically towards international students as well. Not to mention that I know a lot of my own students who actually managed to get internships in their home countries over the summer break when they were going back home to visit their family, and they'd actually be able to work for 2 or 3 months at some very prestigious institutions as well. So that's always an opportunity for international students to broaden their horizon and get work experience, not just in Australia, but overseas and around the world.
Absolutely, Paul. I'd like to add to that. So I actually know of another student who, given the whole sort of chaos and the flashpoint of COVID-19, decided to continue on with their Monash degree and pursue their units online until we move back to a face-to-face setting. And surprisingly enough, they actually got an internship back in their home country. So they're currently an intern while studying their Monash degree online until we go back to a face-to-face teaching style, hopefully next year. In terms of that particular organization that Paul mentioned, it's called Grad Connect. So you may have heard of it in Australia before. It's called Grad Connect. You can type that name. I'll actually put it in chat for everybody. And it's called Grad Connect. And they actually have a section specifically dedicated to international students for internships. So these are the types of facilities and conversations that we regularly have in class. Paul and I, we're both staff, academic educators in Department of Banking and Finance. We have regularly these conversations with students in consultation and privately as well too. So wonderful questions, everybody. Let's continue
Jason,
on.
could I just add
Please,
on that?
please.
I also did the same mentoring program that Judy was talking about, and actually through that, in my cohort of students, a lot of people that had mentors then were able to get internships through their mentor, whether it was in that company or through other connections. So I definitely think that whether it's a set internship or a connection that then leads to an internship, Monash really offers heaps of a large range of those sort of connections and opportunities for all students, really, no matter what level you're at.
Yeah, I really want to emphasize, Matilda made a wonderful point about connections. And while we were preparing for our presentation tonight, we had a great conversation, which could have been the presentation itself, I think. And I think Dirty also mentioned, as an international student, the importance of connections. Dirty, do you remember that we were talking about? Maybe you could share that again with everybody here.
So, I mean, what I used to have back in my home country was that this thing of networking with employers, we didn't used to have anything like back in India. Like famously, what we had in India was, once we are done with our college, some industries come and we have this thing called college placements, where we just give our interviews and our resumes to the industries that come to the colleges and get selected for those jobs. But here in Australia, it's entirely different system. Everything here runs on networking. As large as network you have, the large is your capabilities of growth and your employability. So initially, I found it very hard to adapt myself to this thing because I didn't know how to do this networking. And I found that Monash offered me a load of events where they just helped me develop this skill. And not just this, they helped me with the events so that I could practice networking. they called employers in the sessions where I could interact with them and practice networking.
Great. Thanks for that, everybody. Let's move on to another question. And wonderful, everybody. Thank you so much for all your questions. The next question is by Tejas. Are these clubs open to postgraduate students of Monash Business School? Absolutely. Absolutely. So apart from all the traditional student-only clubs, Business School Broadcasting is open. We've got Masters of Banking and Finance students in there. We've got Masters of Applied Finance students. We've got undergraduate students from doing other majors. Like, for example, Matilda is doing a double degree. So absolutely, it's absolutely open to all students. Moving on to another question. Lauren's there. Hi, Lauren. Are you there? Lauren Brooker, might you still be around, Lauren? All right. So this is one of the tricks that we use in classrooms, trying to call on students to unmute yourself and talk and build those communication skills. So we'll get to that shortly. So I'll read out Lauren's question. Lauren would like to know, what are the benefits and challenges of working with both students and staff in the club? So Dirty, Matilda, you can answer first. What are the challenges of working with slave drivers like Paul and myself?
I'll offer my opinion after Matilda and Josie from the staff point of view.
I think that the challenges more so would just be the misalignment of timetabling sometimes. So you might need to have a discussion and the staff are quite busy, or the students, you've got really big assignment week and that's when the staff are like more free. But saying that also acts as a benefit, because then you're able to sort of handball through different tasks. And definitely in terms of benefits, and thanks for your question, Lauren, benefits, it really does give more of a depth to the experience as a student, and you're able to draw on the knowledge of, I guess, professionals that have been in the space, that are experts in those areas, and also that have just used different tools or experimented, been through different things a little bit longer than you, and then are able to share those and I guess give you a good sounding board from which to grow, rather than just trying to sort of flail around on your own.
Exactly. I mean, I totally agree. I mean, since we had a very new club, and if having the guidance of the staff on taking a lead, telling us, basically guiding us all the way along, and the support that the staff have in the running of the events plays an immense part in running of a club. Despite of the challenges, there are great benefits.
Go ahead, Paul.
Okay, well, working with students is really the highlight of my time at Monash. I'm sure this is probably true for Jason as well, but we decided to get into education because we like working with students. And something that's extremely rewarding when working with students is you really get the opportunity to see students grow. And the difference between working with students and working with other staff is that when you work with students, you have to be a little bit more patient. And that was something that I learned to do as I worked more with students. And watching them grow has been an extremely rewarding experience, to see them grow from not really knowing how to take initiative, not really having the confidence to be able to stand up and say, this is what I want to do and this is how I'm going to do it, to then encouraging them and giving them the opportunity to take responsibility and to grow and to develop that confidence through a nurture environment to a point where they can say, okay, this is what I want to do, this is how I'm going to do it, and this is my club and I'm going to run it. And I think that sort of development is something that we try really hard to foster. And that sort of leadership and the ability to be able to believe in yourself and to stand up and actually do things is something that's highly valued by employers. So getting involved and actually being positive and being an agent of change for what you want to see is something that we really try hard to develop. And hopefully that's something that positively impacts all the students that we have the opportunity to work with.
Thanks, Paul. One of the challenges I faced was, after you've been in the industry for a while, like Paul and myself, who's had a little bit of success in our careers, we learn how to be very effective. So when we first started Business School Broadcasting, it was really giving students the opportunity to fail. where students would try a program. And we said to everybody, we're not here to tell you what to do. We want you to find out for yourself, to discover. And that's the value of university. You can afford to innovate and you can afford to fail. You won't lose your livelihood. And then you have staff mentors there to guide you, to offer you ideas, opinions, but we want you to make up your mind. And that was a very challenging thing for me, knowing that I knew, right, if I did this, this, and this, I could get this done. Whereas I saw the students sometimes, struggling a little bit. I would say, if you ever need any help, please ask. But then after that, just holding back a bit. Sounds a lot like parenting for those of you who are parents. But ultimately, I think it's proven to be extremely fruitful in helping students develop that self-awareness. And as an example, when Monash University approached myself and Paul to run this event, we could just have run this event just with the two of us. How boring would that be? How boring would that be? But rather, we had the opportunity to say, hey, let's open this up to our business school broadcasting students. We've got, and we said, who would like to participate? And we had a flurry of people coming in, and we picked two who would be able to provide you great insight as to what it's like being a student and really how you can get the best out of your university experience. So that's an example of how staff do our best to mentor and to nurture students. And I agree with Paul. That's the same reason why I got into education. I've been at Monash University now for 17 years. And yeah, I can't imagine doing anything else with my time. Wonderful, everybody. Let's move on to the next question. We'll address one more question, and then we'll sort of put the questions on the shelf for the time being. It's wonderful having this great discourse with you all, and then we'll continue on with the presentation, cover a couple of areas, and that will encourage some more of that brain juices to flow. I really like this question. I think it's one that lots of people in the audience may have. With regard to the current situation, could you help provide insight regarding the online mode of pursuing a master's program at Monash University? Now, the very first program we ran was actually how at Monash University we deliver a best practice of online education. And to give you an idea of what we mean by an online education. Most people, when they think of online, so maybe let's ask somebody in the audience. Simran. Hi, Simran, are you there? Can you hear me? Hi, Simran.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Good evening. So when somebody says online education, Simran, what perhaps automatically pops into your mind? What do you think online education is?
I've seen my brother attend online classes, and all he does is he does not, really attend. He's doing other things while the teacher is teaching. So I don't really think it's that effective.
Yeah, absolutely. So Simran, wonderful for that, Simran. And when we asked our prior audience, what do you think online education is? They said very similar things. It's easy for you to be disengaged. It's very easy, and it's just watching a lot of videos. Yeah, watching lots and lots and lots of videos. So if you want to have an idea as to what online education is at Monash, you're experiencing it right now. This is how we do our classes. So we recognize and we build in other things on top of that. So video watching of video content is part of our curriculum. It's not the only part of our curriculum. Now, watching of videos is valuable because you can fast forward, you can rewind, you can consume the content when only one way communication is required. But the value of coming to class and interacting with educators like Paul, interacting with each other, is that you learn through interaction, and that's completely different. It is engaging. That's what we call active learning. And to ensure that our students in this online process actively learn, we have participation. So very soon, I've actually put in an online poll. Everybody will be answering questions in this online poll. If you don't answer, you lose marks. If you answer, you get marks. So it ensures that everybody is engaged all the time. And throughout the entire curriculum, you have a graduated progress of quizzes, that ensure that you're engaged. So we incentivize engagement through assessment. And to give everybody an idea as to what it's like to attend an online class, we're having that experience right now, everybody. We want to have a conversation and discussion with you. The time where we're just lecturing and you're just listening, that's over, that's finished. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, Jason, on this thing. It's just to add on, but the networking factor that we talked about earlier is missing up. That I feel much, because the face-to-face and the informal interaction that Jyoti was saying, that is the must needed for any career growth or any interactions needed in the public or anything, whether in a company or something. But that is the main point that is missing up, I believe.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So and with that, Karan, I'd like to also bring in somebody else's question, which says, when will be recommencing? When will we be recommencing face-to-face education? So we were about to, and then the second wave of COVID-19 broke out in Victoria, and then the government said, no more classes.
But I guess in Feb it is going on. I have some friends in Melbourne, so they say that only 20 cases are coming up each day. So hopefully by November, that finger crossed, I must say.
Yep,
Yeah,
fingers, I've got my toes crossed.
Yeah.
Well,
so by November, everything is going to be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I sort of just wanted to add to what Jason was talking about before, and also to address your point too, Karen. Well, the first point I'll say is that I want to draw a very sharp distinction between what we're doing and what you would define as online education. What we're doing right now is not online education. We are doing an in-person class that just happens to be delivered through an online medium, which is very different to the traditional way that most people think about online education. I remember back when we realized that the university was closing, Jason and I and our team, we had about 2 days to prepare. So I remember I was actually driving home. I just finished teaching for the day, and Anne, who is one of the coordinators in a unit that Jason and I teach, she gave me a call and she said, "Hey, Paul, you know that class that you're teaching tomorrow? That's not going ahead. We're all going online." And we had basically until the end of the week to prepare to transition all of our classes online. And something that we spent a lot of time talking about and discussing in a lot of depth was, how do we replicate the in-person class experience through the online medium? So we know that we can just talk and you guys can hear us talk. That's easy. But we wanted to know what makes an in-person class special. Why did you decide to do an in-person class? Why did I decide to do an in-person class when I was a student? And so on. So we actually identified that it's the interaction with staff and with students that makes the in-person classroom experience special. That's why after hundreds and hundreds of years and with all sorts of advancements in technology, we still hang out with our friends. We still go out for dinner. We still go to class and spend time together. We don't simply just live in our own little bubble, even though we can do everything at home, as evidenced by what's going on right now. We can do that, but that's not how we want to live our lives. So we spend a lot of time talking about how do we bring all of that interaction into the classroom, including things as basic as encouraging students to turn on their cameras so that they can talk to each other, see one another, realize that, hey, we're all in this together, and that there are so many other students out there who are doing the exact same thing as I am, and creating that sort of virtual classroom. So I don't want to call it online education, it's virtual education. And I think that there's a big difference between the two. And just to sort of take it to Karan's point, there's definitely going to be much less opportunity to interact and talk, but it doesn't mean that there aren't any opportunities to interact and talk. Jason and I, we run a program called the COVID Economy, which is a program that tries to substitute for a lot of the missed out interactions that you would have gotten on an on-campus environment. So that program's been running since the start of the year, and last semester students had the opportunity to meet and speak to senior members of industry from the big four banks, from superannuation funds, from top ASX 200 companies. We recently had a COVID Economy broadcast with a past Monash alumni who's now a managing director at a property development company, and we'll be having a number of other COVID Economy broadcasts with guests from all sorts of different industries and sectors that students in banking and finance would be interested in going on and pursuing and looking at. So there's definitely opportunities still there, and there's boundless networking opportunities, especially now that everyone is much more open to networking online, that a lot of the traditional methods of networking, I think, are actually substituted quite perfectly with virtual opportunities instead.
Absolutely.
Okay, so apart from this units and studies that we're going on in person, that's okay. what about the clubs and societies that you work on? Because that is the main part I think in the university career, the university time that builds up the network and connections and all. So how are those things going on? I've seen at your site that there's a business society also and other culture events. But I also, just to add on to for other students, I just saw the Monash culture performances also that happened virtually this year. That was really good. What about the societies? Again, I'm recurring to that question.
Well,
Maybe
Matilda
and
and
Jyoti could
Jyoti, yeah.
answer that.
Yeah.
So definitely, I mean, yeah, the societies that we have previously and the societies, I mean, I remember when we used to have we were planning an orientation festival for our business school broadcasting, and we had all the preparations done. But the night before that, we were informed that the orientation is cancelled, and we can no longer have on-campus events with our societies. So we had to come and adapt ourselves with this new normal, and had to come up with new events such as the COVID economy, where we had this online event rather than just running the on-campus events. Previously, the Matilda came up with a very interesting on-campus event named Fitness and Finance, which could only be run on campus, and that was a very successful one. But still, we have to get adopted to this new normal. We had to have new events coming up all the year, and we came up with the COVID economy. We came up with BSB Buddy, where we just gather around weekly to know how our partners and the societies are going through. If they're going through any hardships, we just share our, I mean, if we want to crib about our assignments, we just join BSB Buddy and we crib all together. I mean, it's just a normal.
You complain about me a lot.
Well, that was a secret.
But I definitely think that just like everything else, it's taking some time. Obviously, Jyoti and I are both members of BSB, so I am not a member of another club, but I am a Monash Wellbeing Ambassador. And so just like that with BSB as well, we're just looking at ways to flip. And most of these student clubs are run by students who are also doing studies and trying to learn and trying to, adapt and change with the changing environment. So, you don't want to be pushing all your energy into creating this online forum when you think it's going to go back into person and then it's coming online. But I definitely think that there's a lot of clubs that are changing things to be online or having that support. You can explore different things. There's different events. I know that Monash is actually running quite a few events for Diversity and Inclusion Week. And there's actually a whole week, I think, if you guys have a look, for international students looking at different things as well.
Yeah, it's running an International Student Week this week itself by the Graduate Development Department. Again, coming up with various events telling about the visa rights of the international students, how they can effectively find jobs, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, so there's heaps of other things, and I know Monash, for example, this is Monash as a whole, they have a mindfulness session every lunchtime, which was in person. Now that's just flipped and that's online and it's free, so anyone could come along if they did want to. But there's a lot of stuff there, and just like when you are on campus, the things aren't going to come over and hit you in the face, or some of them will, but if you take time to have a little look around, there's a lot going on, whether it's online, whether it's in person. You're definitely not missing out on things. It's just how it's coming across is a different platform, and I'm sure that's how some people felt when we started having mobile phones or internet. It's just flipping, learning, it's a new way of life, and here we are.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what Matilda and Jyoti are saying, but if I may just add a point that I think is really pertinent to this discussion as well, is that the experience of going online has, I think, taught not just myself, but all of our students a whole lot about the real world and how it actually works. So I've had to pick up a lot of new skills on video production, on video editing, how to communicate online, and all of that's been extremely valuable. And I was actually just talking to one of my friends recently who runs his own startup in the Silicon Valley in San Francisco. And he was talking to me about hiring some new people. So he runs a data analytics company, and he was saying that he was interested in bringing on board some people who were experts in data analytics. And I sort of asked him, aside from the technical skills, which you obviously need, what do you think is what's the most important thing for succeeding in the 21st century? And he said technology, being able to use technology. And what was important in sort of the 20 to 30 years prior, which was getting people who are familiar with computers, it's now getting people who are familiar with computers but don't have to come into an office. So he said that one of the things that he's actually considering after the coronavirus pandemic subsides is that he's going to be reducing his real estate. Now, of course, that's huge because as a business, he's realized now that he can have people working remotely, working from home, anywhere around the country, really. And I think that all those opportunities are going to become much more numerous as people get used to interacting and working online. And by developing those skills, you want to be at the forefront, or gives you the opportunity to be at the forefront of all of these different opportunities that are going to definitely come up.
And can I just add on that as well? Oh, sorry. I think as well, like university is setting you up for the workforce in multiple ways. And this is just another way that you can, I guess, play around with getting your Zoom camera right, play around with getting your sound right, play around with writing your email, keeping the communication going, learning how to use the Google Doc, the team chat, all of those things where it's maybe not at a detriment of your career or your salary. And so you're able to draw those skills in and it becomes part of your university education. Whereas you might sit there and be like, oh, this is so negative and hard and we can't go into university. There's that flip side where you're actually really learning all those skills that are really, really applicable to the workforce. And much like what Paul just said, my old boss, they've got rid of their CBD office now and they only work remotely and it just works. And I definitely see that a lot of companies and a lot of the future of the workforce will be like that. And so the more practice you have adapting and learning like that and going to your class online, and I'm not saying it's going to be online forever, but having those skills and being able to flip and that flexibility, the adaptability is so, so key as the industry, as the world moves forward.
Yeah, I'm also doing the same currently right now, work from home, so I can feel what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So everybody, you could see why we invited Matilda and Dirty, two wonderful Monash students that Paul and I are so proud of. I'd like to put a pin on that conversation and put it on the shelf because you can see how the two of them articulate and communicate their ideas. And when we talk about how we prepare postgraduates for the COVID economy era, let's start off by examining the question, what are the most in-demand skills that employers are looking for in their graduates? Now, you can do an internet search, you'll reveal an abundance of employer surveys and research that answers the question. We talk to employers all the time. I've never heard once an employer say, oh, I hired Dirty because she got 98% on her programming, or I hired Matilda because she had this combination of postgraduate subjects that gives us the right skill set that we need. We find that the graduates and postgraduates who get hired and who do very well in their careers are the ones who have the most developed soft skills. And we've actually been talking about that all the while. So that's our focus of our conversation today. How does Monash Business School help postgraduates develop the soft skills that are in most demand by employers? So at this time, we want to involve everybody in the audience. I'll insert in the online polling link. So if everybody, you could type that link into a new tab in your web browser, you can actually copy and paste it from chat. And this will open up one of our best practice education tools, which is online polling. So in online polling, we can automatically feed a question to the audience. We can get a sense of your understanding and give feedback to you automatically. And from there, we can tailor the class, the conversation to be very bespoke to who's around. So what I'll do is that I'll share that online polling question with everybody now. And I'll bring it up on my screen. And everybody, to give you an idea as to what it looks like, this is online polling. So as you are typing in your questions, this is being projected as a word cloud. So the more similar answers is given, the larger the word, and it gives us a good idea as to how everyone thinks about this question. And I think Seema asked earlier on, experience was that people are disengaged. So these questions delivered live in class would have marks, would have assessment. So automatically, once students get incentivized to participate, and yes, we're doing the work, we're engaging, we're helping our students learn from one another, we're engaging and learning with our lecturers and our tutors, that's rewarded through participation assessment. So this is an online polling tool that we use in Monash University called Poll Everywhere. You can see that it's really nice and handy. And at this point in time, I think we've almost finished in terms of the types of skills. And great. So would anybody like to suggest? Feel free to unmute yourself. Yeah, what do you think is the most important skill that people in the audience think we need to have for the post-COVID economy? Anyone? What do we think?
Come on, guys. We've already had a chat. It's your turn.
So we quickly picking up with the new technologies as they come up. I guess that's the most apart from networking, I must say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is how we get an idea of what our audience is thinking. We use this in every lecture. I use this in every lecture and in every workshop that we do. So it seems that the audience thinks of one of the most important things is communication. So communication, that's pretty big. We've got adaptability, engagement. Leadership's another big one. Yeah, communication, adaptability, engagement, and leadership. And guess what, everybody? You are correct. All right. When we talk to employers, we talk to, you see reports coming out about top skills that graduates need to have. It's all about these things: engagement, communication, adaptability, and leadership. So we've got other online polling questions for you, everybody. And let's actually continue on to our next slide, which is the 4 key areas of soft skills that we aim to help you develop at Monash Business School. So building soft skills, and may I emphasize this particular word here, attitude. Building the soft skills and the attitude for success post-COVID-19. At the postgraduate level, we want to help you build excellence in communication and articulation, flexibility and adaptability, productivity with technology, and leadership and teamwork. And guess what, everybody? It coincides and aligns very strongly with your own expectations. So what we're going to do for the remainder of our talk is that we're going to touch on each of these areas, and we're going to get you to ask your questions with regards to these areas, and we're going to ask Dirty and Matilda to share their experiences as to how in the area of communication, flexibility, and productivity, how their experience at Monash University has built them up to excel in this area. So let's start with communication and articulation. I'll go back to the prior slide a little bit later on. So let's clearly define some parameters for our discussion. It's very easy to say graduate employers want us to be able to communicate, but what does that mean? So it's to effectively, and I would say authentically, express your ideas and personality to a wide audience. This is both in spoken and written form. And our objective is to be able to form a human connection. We don't just talk for the sake of talking. We talk and we write to connect with other people. And when you're in a job interview, when you're working in a team, your ability to connect with other people, that is a gauge of whether you are successful at communication or not. It's to be relatable, to be understood. So with these parameters, let's now go to Dirty. So maybe you could share with us your experiences as to how Monash and your teachers, your units at Monash, your experiences, your extracurricular activities has helped you build up your communication, your articulation skills?
So I did this unit, Foundations of Finance, taught by Jason itself. And there's a very interesting extracurricular activity that I was given an opportunity to be a part of last semester. It's a peer learning program. What it's about is it's about a teaching apprenticeship, wherein I assist Jason in his consultations with the students. Like during the consultations, students pop in and ask their doubts, their questions that they had problems with, or some concepts that they're still finding hard to understand. So they just pop into consultation, just go on with their doubts. And I, as a past student of that unit, it's very important to understand what they're actually asking for, and then communicating to them so that they can understand us. Since the unit is Foundations of Finance, we have to take it to a very basic level when we explain students about what the concepts really are. We can't explain them in very technical terms. We had to go to very basic terms, to maybe buying something from the grocery, the Paul gave a very good example of. And I mean, very, very basic things. So communicating that to students so that they can understand it really helped me to inculcate a communication skill within me. And I came out as the winner.
Yeah, Dirty was our winner. And also because we scaffold students' ability to grow in communication. So number one, for all students, we have compulsory assessment, where students will have to present in a team. So they'll be just like this over Zoom, for example, if we're online, or if we're face-to-face, they'll be face-to-face in front of us and they present. And then we staff would then provide constructive criticism as to how they can improve. So all students do that, but students can also choose to go further. And that teaching apprenticeship that Dirty mentioned, where she comes in and, for example, Ziyao asks a question and say, Dirty, go ahead, give it a shot. Now, how would you address that question? Really helps build confidence and really assessing how successful are you in terms of communicating. If your fellow student has answered and understands you, then you're successful. So Matilda, go ahead.
All right. So I think Monash, or like university in general, really sets you up, and the way that Monash, and especially the business school, approaches this really covers a few different levels, I guess. First of all, in terms of, and this is communicating and being able to articulately express yourself. First of all, like Jason mentioned, almost every unit, but I've definitely noticed it in the business side of my degree, will feature some form of presentation, whether it's standing up with your team or on your own. And through those, and by building those skills, now I feel quite confident and comfortable, obviously standing up or sitting down here speaking to everyone, but comfortable to be able to stand up and present my views and my thoughts, and being able to articulately form sentences in a correct manner, I guess. And I guess as well, that is to come together as a team. A lot of your university classes will have a mix of people from different countries, different backgrounds, different, I guess, foundational knowledges. And so combining that, you're then also building your skills in cross-cultural communication, your ability to form relationships, to, I guess, learn about the cultures, and then also find the similarities between you and others. And I just find it so interesting. It's like having a cultural immersion right there at the same time as learning whatever topic you're into. So that's definitely, I guess, one of the key points I found. And definitely as the world becomes more globalized, having that cross-cultural knowledge and the ability to communicate is so important, because your workplaces, your colleagues, we're becoming this globalized society, that then you've got this foundation where you're able to do that. And we were talking earlier before this, even things as simple as being able to write an email and form an email, so that then when you are out in the workforce, you're portraying, just like we want to learn how to adjust the video camera, have the sound on, you're then portraying yourself in a way that you want to portray yourself, rather than just typing it out like it's a text. You're thinking, all right, have I got the comma? Have I got the full stop? Have I got the capital? And you've had these years of practicing emailing your tutors, your lecturers, and everyone's quite receptive to you being able to share and ask questions. So I've definitely found that very helpful.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Driti and Matilda have said. If I'll just add something as well, first to add to what Driti said, the peer learning program is a fantastic way for students to get involved and to practice their communication skills and to learn as well. Something that I learned when I was still a student many years ago was that if you read something, your retention is very, very, very low, and you probably have all studied enough to know that. If you read something and then write it down afterwards, your retention is a little bit higher, right? That's why if you really want to remember something, then you read it and then you might take notes on it or something like that. But when you have to teach somebody, your retention is far, far higher than even writing it down, even listening to it, any other method. And the reason is because when you teach somebody, not only are you simply taking that information in, but you also have to play with it, sculpt it in your head in such a way that other people can understand, and then you spit it out. So that process of processing, I guess is the word, the information inside your head is really, really important when you're teaching. And that's something that really helps you to understand everything in so much detail, because you can't teach somebody unless you have a really good grasp of it yourself. So that opportunity to be able to work with other students and to teach them, senior students, sort of working with junior students, that sort of thing is fantastic. That's an opportunity that I wish that I had more of when I was a student. Now, just sort of the other thing that I wanted to add on as well to Matilda's point is that's really important too. In many ways, for those of you who aren't from Australia, we do have a bit of a reputation for being very laid back in Australia. If you think about what you know about Australia, you might envision that we're all sitting on Bondi Beach with beach umbrellas, kicking our feet up in the sand and enjoying the warm weather that we're supposed to be going into over the next couple of months. That might be your impression of Australia, but in many ways, at least in the corporate world, Australia is still a very formal, rigid, and almost to some extent hierarchical structure where formality and the way that you communicate with people is extremely, extremely important. And I know friends of mine who've simply been able to get a job or not been able to get a job simply based on their first impressions when meeting with a recruiter or when writing an email. And it's astounding the difference that sort of first impression can make. One of my close friends that I went to uni with back in the day is working in HR at a major firm in Australia. And I was talking to her recently, and she said that she was going through graduate applications, which are currently going on right now. So if you're in the final year of your degree, now is around about the time when you'd be applying for graduate jobs. And I asked her, well, after the algorithm sort of sorts out all the applications, what do you look for? What do you rank highly and what do you not rank highly? And she says that, so she does in HR, does the first pass of who to pass along to the actual recruitment managers. So she's sort of the first wall that students hit. She says she looks at the cover letter. Anybody who has grammatical errors, spelling errors, doesn't address it to the right person, that's out. So developing these skills is extremely important. And let me tell you, it really makes a huge difference in terms of the first impressions that you can leave with somebody. And leaving a positive first impression is so important. I know people who've gotten jobs, students of mine, simply just by leaving a positive impression from the chance to meet a graduate employer. And they remember your face, they remember your name, and that's going to have huge impact on your career. So definitely second everything that Matilda and Dredi have been saying. Those are definitely valuable experiences that you'll have the chance to build up at Monash.
Can I just add on that as well, Paul? That was so insightful. And I definitely think I actually did an internship in legal recruitment and actually then started working there. So like I said, internships lead to beautiful places. But on that as well, you might be sitting there, the most amazing student, amazing marks, amazing soft skills, everything. But all that recruiter is seeing from the start is that cover letter and your resume. So that's where you really want to make that, and exactly what Paul was saying, get the grammatical errors, get rid of all of that. And also I would just recommend, this is a bit of a side note, but I would recommend checking out the different, what they're sort of looking for in your CV, because some jobs, and more so in Australia, well, it sort of depends what industry, they don't like to have a photo on your resume. Some industries do, some places do, some countries do. So little tip there for graduates going for jobs, just have a bit more of an investigate there, because you don't want to get cut out in the first round before you even had a chance to, for them to see your face or for you to, sell yourself. And really think they're seeing that piece of paper. They don't know anything that you don't tell them on that piece of paper.
Exactly. I completely agree. And we were having this discussion before itself that as an international student, we face a lot of trouble in formatting these things, because what we had learned from the past is just the content and not the formatting. But formatting plays a very, very good role. I mean, university is the best place to learn. I know how bad I used to frame my emails in my first year and how I've improved. So when I frame my emails and send out to my lecturers and tutors, they show how professional you are. I mean, university is the best place to learn that. So.
And just to tie off the conversation, I think a previous student asked in the chat, does Monash University help with resume writing and so forth? So I'd like to address to a couple of things. Firstly, while domestic students like Matilda have wonderful sorts of benefits from learning how to communicate, I would say that the opportunities are even more for international students, because you have the opportunity, the environment where we're very interested to help you nurture proficiency in a second language. You're proficient in your first language, but if you can gain in proficiency in a second language, then that absolutely puts you ahead, in my opinion. And where you're able to immerse yourself in units, in club life, with staff, speaking and getting that practice, we hope to really give you that environment that helps you develop real proficiency in another language. And what I'd like to do is just share the screen with everybody. And you may have heard of LinkedIn. It's a very popular professional website for advertising yourself. And in this particular blog of LinkedIn, they actually talk about the types of skills and the courses that LinkedIn offers. And guess what, everybody? Here, for communication, LinkedIn talks about digital body language. So again, helping our postgraduate students adjust to the new COVID economy. When you present over Zoom, when you see us in consultation, we will share with you different ideas to hopefully suit your style, as to build a way of communicating online, which is very similar, but still a little bit different than doing so in person, of how to authentically show yourself. And there's another one on pitching yourself. So all the things that we're talking about, everybody, are very much in line with what the industry is looking for. And LinkedIn is a premier industry source on this. And I'll be referring back to this a little bit later on. Now, I've actually delivered another online polling question. So if you go back to your online polling, we actually have a little poll for you to do. Now, this is another type of question. So I think Matilda explains it best of how to use this. Matilda, could you help our audience learn how to activate and rank what they think might be the best methods of student learning?
Yes. So once you've got the poll up, and if you did want to, Jason, do you want to just repaste that link in case people lost
Sure.
it?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, I've got it. I can pop it in.
Yeah.
So once you've got the poll up on your screen, which will look a little bit different, you can see over on the right-hand side, you're going to actually click on listening, teaching, or doing, and then just use those arrows to navigate up and down. And what you'd like to do is pop the one that you rate the highest at the top and the one you rate the lowest at the bottom. And Paul, I think, was just going to clarify what teaching meant here.
Yeah, so just to clarify what each of these things mean, and to give some examples. So teaching means, for example, you teach some friends. So maybe you and your friends get together and you spend some time teaching them the most difficult concepts that you're seeing in your course. Maybe it's through formal methods like participating in our peer learning program that Triti was talking about before. So, or it could be teaching someone who doesn't know much about what you're talking about at all. So, I remember when I was a student, I would find friends who didn't know very much about finance, and I'd teach them about the latest thing that I was learning, and the process of translating everything that I'd learned into simple everyday language was hugely beneficial. So that's what I mean by teaching. It means that you're teaching what you're learning. Doing means putting pen to paper and working on problems or doing assignments or doing exercises. It's using the things that you've learned and then actually producing something out of that that's usually written or typed. And when we talk about listening, of course, that's passive learning. It means that you're watching a video or you're sitting in a lecture or you're sitting in a tutorial or you're listening to someone explain this concept, or perhaps even reading. So it should be listening/reading. It might be reading a book or reading some lecture notes or something like that. So have a go at trying to think about which of these options you think would be the best way of learning to what you think would be the worst way of learning.
Thanks, everybody. And just to sort of, that's a bit of fun, just for us to get an idea as to, there's a lot of variety of online polling questions by which we engage everybody, and usually those are associated with some form of assessment. Of course, we engage people as well by asking them to speak, as we've all been doing. And the next slide that I'll share with everybody is how do we, in the business school, how do we develop these skills with students? And that's really was in my prior slide earlier on. So how do we teach at Monash Business School? Well, you do listening, and one of the most common ways is by watching video content, but you also do, and that's by class interaction and out-of-class activities. So you work on, for example, problem-based learning. You have case studies which are pulled from industry that you work together, and you actually do the work. Of course, doing as well too comes in with the internships, with those extracurricular activity, and of course teaching. That's not for everybody. That's only for the students who are interested to go that extra step. Of course, we've got extracurricular activities about that in peer learning and the peer assisted study scheme. Now, we have a goal in the business school, and that's to maximize interaction between staff and students. Yep, that's one of our goals, because when you have a good relationship with your staff, when you feel that they care about your education, when you know that they are thinking about the problems and they understand the problems that you have, automatically you will feel more positive about your education. You will feel more engaged. You'll be more motivated. So maybe, Paul, you can share perhaps some of the experiences that third-year students face and the disengagement they feel, and how we actively try to combat that.
Well, well, that's a very high order, Jason. I think it's very difficult to try and rectify something that can be at times a very systematic issue. I think it begins by recognizing that university is first and foremost a community, and what I mean by that is that as we get more used to working with technology, I think that sometimes people use technology the wrong way. And I've seen that a lot happen with not just students, but even in industry and even amongst my fellow colleagues, where we use technology because we're lazy, and then we take that as a bit of a crutch for doing things that we normally wouldn't want to do. So, say for example, if I didn't really like interacting with people and I'm lazy, I don't really want to go to class, then I can use technology and say, hey, look, my lectures are recorded, or my workshops are recorded, or I can just read lecture slides afterwards. Who cares? I'm just going to disengage. Technology, on the one hand, I think the downside is that it allows people to disengage fairly easily, because there's always this sense of security that no matter what happens, there's always going to be recordings, there's always going to be videos, I can always Google things, I can always learn things. But I would say that that's the wrong way of looking at technology. And something that I've learned as I've started working, especially with students, is that technology can also have huge upsides as well. It allows us to communicate with people in ways that we were not able to communicate before. For example, I know that a lot of you guys right now are not even in Australia. Just to think about it, 20 years ago, we wouldn't be able to sit here having this sort of conversation. So the fact that we're sitting here having this conversation, the fact that world didn't just stop working because we had a pandemic is testament to how much technology has progressed. So I think that one of the things that we always encourage, and at least I always spend a lot of time encouraging my third year students to do, is to the best of their ability, take advantage of everything that technology can do for you in order to stay in contact with other people. Means reaching out and getting to know other students, spending time talking to other students, especially using technology. It's so easy now to video call somebody, get together and have a study group, for example, if you find that there's something difficult. And that process of sitting down and working on a task together and talking to your peers is a fantastic way of learning. And I'll tell a little bit of an anecdote in one of my in one of the subjects that I'm teaching. So I teach, like I said before, one of the core subjects in the Master of Banking and Finance, which a lot of you might be interested in. And that subject is financial modeling. Now, that's a really difficult subject because we're teaching financial spreadsheeting and modeling and programming skills to a lot of students who have never programmed before. I think when we did the survey, it was something along the lines of 80% to 90% of the students had never done any programming in their entire life. And we have to get them up to scratch really quickly. Why? Because programming is an in-demand skill. Everyone wants graduates who are able to use Excel and to use VBA and to know how to program. So it's an important skill competency to have. But what we're able to do in that subject is, in order to help bring everybody up, we have continuous feed-forward assessments, which encourage students to actually work together and to spend time together. And when students come to me and they say, Paul, this is so hard. I've never programmed before. I don't know how to do this. And I ask them, are you working on this by yourself? I can guarantee you 10 out of 10 times they say, yeah, I've just been plodding away at it. I don't talk to anybody about it. And I give the suggestion that form a study group, talk to other people in your class, see where they're going and spend time together and work on these problems. And when they do that, they never come back and see me again. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe they give up, but I'm hoping that that they've actually managed to find successful study groups and actually improve their skills. And looking at the grades that we get, the students that work the best together, the ones that participate in class, that talk, that really interact with each other and take the opportunity to, or take advantage of the opportunities that they're given in a university environment, those students are the ones who do the best. So I think, just sort of to finish up what I was saying, it's important to remember that even though sometimes it might feel a little bit alone, I think Melbourne's actually in one of the harshest lockdowns in the world right now. So for those of you who are overseas or interstate, you might be a little bit better off than we are. But whenever you're feeling alone, just imagine what the world would be like if we had this lockdown, not right now, but in 1960. Yeah, or not even 1960, 1990. Yeah, that was around about when most of you guys were probably born, right? Imagine what it would have been like to have a lockdown back then and how much worse it would be. So just keeping that in mind really helps us to appreciate the ability of technology to bring us together, and keeping that in mind, especially as we move forward, is I think so important. Those skills are going to be with us forever.
Great, everybody. So moving on to the next area and the next key soft skill that we want to help our postgraduates develop is flexibility and adaptability. So let's frame that. And what do we mean by flexibility and adaptability? It's really about attitude. So you'll build the technical skills in the units that you pick, but staff, through the assessment, through our interaction with you, we want to help you build the emotional maturity and the self-awareness to deal with failure. We all fail, and there's a stigma to it. I don't believe that failure is a bad thing. I believe failure is a good thing. I failed many, many times in my life. But building up that resilience and the resourcefulness to overcome problems, that speaks and that builds character. And employers, they often rate, we want employees who are flexible, who can adapt, who can say, right, things have changed. How are we going to shift ourselves? How are we going to pick ourselves off the ground? How are we going to move forward? And also with this is independent and creative thinking. We want you to think out of the box. We don't want you to accept everything that we say. We want you to question. We want you to think independently. And ultimately, the value of education is that you can make the right decisions for yourself to make your life better. And this is the basis for innovation. So perhaps let's go back to our student panel, Dirty and Matilda, and just get your experiences about flexibility and adaptability.
Sure. So, I mean, I would like to answer it in a two-part way. The first flexibility experience that I had was when I had to adapt myself to a new culture over here. I mean, that was a big change for me. So, and that was a major one. So, the previously that I discussed with you guys was that I used to forgot to check my emails. I mean, that was a huge one. Getting adapt to the email culture here. I mean, everything, like beginning from the classes, lectures to graduate roles, everything runs on email over here. And I didn't have a habit of checking my email. I was too busy replying to WhatsApp chats because. So getting that adaptability and making myself flexible to adapt myself to checking my emails regularly was a huge change for me. And in terms of innovation, I would like to give an example of what our roles is as a student society. I mean, we had a new normal here and we had to come up with a whole lot of events. So we have to think out of box and how to conduct the events in this new normal, in this new online platform. So coming up with a newsletter or the COVID economy or running student financial news because we were not able to shoot in a studio anymore. So coming up with unique ideas of that itself, that really, that was a mind-boggling thing. And thinking out of the box was a major task for us. So flexibility and innovation for me was that.
Thanks, Duty. Matilda? Sorry, you're still muted.
There we go, little trick there, guys. Remember to unmute. For my answer to this question, I'm going to draw on a business that I started during the lockdown. So I'm here in Melbourne, just as the other presenters are, and I work as a fitness instructor. And during the first lockdown, I guess I noticed that a lot of people were struggling financially. A lot of people were losing their jobs. Gyms were closing. There was less connection. We have a lot of restrictions in place. And so through this, I used the online platform of Zoom and I also actually created a website and a payment system and lots of other systems that I'll talk about in a second to allow me to deliver online fitness classes with a pay-as-you-go system. So anyone can come, doesn't matter where they are, doesn't matter their fitness level, doesn't matter their financial position. And it was just a way to create community. And I think that my drive and my ability to adapt and to be flexible in the face of the changing dynamic environment that at the moment is COVID-19, but will be many other things, whether it's financial or just however the environment goes. I definitely think that came from many skills that I gained from my university education, as well as other experiences. So through creating that, I had, I guess, my marketing knowledge that I had in my business degree, the business law studies that I did. So everyone who books in, if you guys decide to come along, everyone will have to tick a terms and conditions to say they accept that. There's the payment side, so the finance, the math side, looking at weighing up the profit, the loss. Okay, is it financially viable for me to buy a new camera? Should I buy a new microphone now? Will that increase the amount of people coming? How many people are coming for the free ones? How many people are paying? And just all of those little things that maybe when I actually stop and think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I learned that in first year marketing, or I learned that in this subject, or, oh, that was when I did that really in-depth study into business law. And maybe at the time you're looking at it and you're thinking like, why am I studying this? How does this apply to my real world situation? But when I was faced with that situation where, I actually lost a lot of employment because of the pandemic, I was faced with that situation. I was like, oh, so what do? I've got all this free time. I've got these skills. How do I share that? And how do I do that in a way that's helping others and that is financially viable? And so by pulling all those skills together that I guess I formed in my university studies, I was able to develop and run this successful business. So
Wow.
There you go. That's my answer.
Wow, wonderful. Karan, you had a question. Please go ahead.
Okay, can I add a point to this adaptability and flexibility?
Please. Please go ahead.
I believe in a quote I would like to share with you. It's like, if you're going to hunt a gazelle, just take the weapons required to kill a lion.
That's fantastic. Could you put that in chat for everybody? Type that in chat, Karan. Yeah, and then yeah, we could have that. It's what
That's the motto that my grandfather always told me.
Type that in chat for us so we can all benefit from it.
That's a fantastic piece of wisdom. And I'd just like to add something as well, which is one of the reasons that I love teaching at university, and one of the reasons why I decided to pursue that as a career, was university education is different from trade school. And the reason why university is different is that it doesn't teach you simply skills that you then take and then apply directly. So, for example, it's not like we're teaching you how to what's a skill that you need in finance, how to value a property or something like that. And then we teach you that as a hard skill that you can then take that skill and then just change the numbers around a little bit and you'll get the answer. It's not like that, because as a professional, the difference between what you're doing as an output versus everybody else is that you're being hired not for your output, but for your knowledge. And I think that that's something that a lot of students don't really realize until they get to the end of their degree, when they have the maturity to be able to look back and say, okay, it's not actually that I've learned X, Y, Z during my degree that makes me super employable, but it's the fact that I've built up this foundation that I can now build upon, and I know how to do things, and my knowledge is what is valuable. I know how to learn. I know how to pick up these new skills. If someone asks me to do something in VBA, hey, I remember doing something similar to this when I did that financial modeling subject, so now I can build my own solutions. It's about what can you offer to a company when you go out to work. And I think that university is a fantastic way of building up those sorts of skills in an environment that's very safe, that's very forgiving. And it's not the direct skills that you're building, but it's the foundation on which you can then go and develop all these other wonderful things.
Thanks for that, Paul. Now, moving on to the third, and we'll be finishing off our presentation shortly, but moving on to the third soft skill that we wish to emphasize to students, and that's productivity through technology. And I think that we're actually quite aware of the need to be comfortable, to be apt, to be flexible with technology. But what I'd like to share with everybody is the attitude by which the business school hopes to share with you. And that is the recognition that technology is a means to an end. It's not the end itself. And one common problem we find, and there's lots of research behind this, that people in the industry, after a while, they say, I'm an expert about C+, or I'm an expert at basic programming. And they invest so much of their self. They invest so much of their identity and their esteem in being very good at a particular piece of technology. But technology is improving and changing all the time. What happens when that technology becomes out of date? What happens when you invest so much of yourself so that the technology is no longer relevant? Technology is changing over time. So the sort of attitude that we hope our postgraduate students will have is having an open mind and a willing attitude to update and improve your technology skill set to dynamic work requirements. And this is very tied into our prior skill of being flexible and being adaptable. Yes, we recognize that technology is important, but we also need to continually update our technology skill set. And part of that really is the ability to sacrifice time, to experiment, and to find a better way of using technology. So Paul actually has a very entertaining story to share about that. Paul, would you like to share that with everybody?
Sure. So I first wanted to, before I tell the story, I just wanted to sort of clarify the final point and sort of the way that I see technology, which is that there are going to be people who enter technical careers. If you want to be a computer programmer, that's fantastic. You can be a computer programmer and be very successful at that. But the vast majority of people are not developers of technology. They're consumers of technology. And I think sometimes when we consume technology, we think about technology the wrong way. For example, we think about, okay, I learned that I can use, I learned in uni that I can use Excel to calculate present values of cash flows. So therefore, I can use Excel to calculate present value of cash flows. And that's all you ever think about, because you don't expand your horizons and you don't ask yourself every time you come up with a new problem, how can I use the technology that I have to make what I'm doing much more efficient? And I think there's a Bill Gates quote, which which I particularly like because I'm a very lazy person, which is that if you want something to be done well, if you have a hard task, you give it to a lazy person because they're going to find the most efficient way of doing it. And it's a little bit tongue in cheek, but I think there is some truth to that. And I'm not saying that we should all be lazy, but we should always be thinking about what is the most efficient way of doing things. And technology always helps us with that. So the funny story was that it actually happened just this Sunday when Jason, myself, and a couple of our other colleagues were in a meeting, and we were having to edit the grades of 150 students, students who had gotten a particular question. And the plan was to go through each individual student, look at the question they had, and if they had that question, we would then do the edit. Now, we have about, 600-700 students in the cohort, Jason, with about 150 students that would have had to be edited. Now, first of all, I noticed two problems with that. The first is that it's a lot of manual labor. Thankfully, I wasn't the one who had to do it, but someone had to do it, and I felt very bad for that person who had to do it. And the second point that I think is just as important as well is that manual labor means a lot of errors, which is something that we don't want. So I thought to myself, okay, so how can I use technology to be able to help us solve this problem much more quickly? And I thought, okay, we can actually export all of these different students onto a spreadsheet, and then I can just write a quick script, which then checks which question the student had. And if that question is coming up as a yes, I can just then highlight that with a number 1. And by doing that, I reduced the problem, which would have taken hours to do manually, including possibly correcting mistakes, to something that can only be done, or it can be done in only maybe a couple of minutes. So I think by the time we'd finished the meeting, we'd already done with it, and we didn't have to think about it again, whereas we're actually planning to do it over the next couple of days. So I'm not telling that story just to sort of say that, hey, I'm really good at technology. That's not the point. I didn't know how to do it. But the point is that I thought about, okay, I know how to use technology. How can I use technology to help me solve this problem in a much quicker way? And that's something that you've got to take away from university, which is that we're giving you the skill set to be able to solve problems, to be able to actually solve problems that your employers want you to solve. That's why they're hiring you. They're not hiring you to come there they're not hiring you to come there to shine their shoes and to wash their clothes, right? They're hiring you to come there to actually solve problems that they cannot solve themselves. And if you're an expert in technology, for example, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are the best and you know the most, but it means that you know how to apply the skills that you have to a broad range of problems that are relevant to what people want.
Wonderful, everybody. And to finish off our presentation, we'll be moving on to the final soft skill. And that's something that you hear employers always talk about. That's leadership and teamwork. So in the business school, we hope to be able to guide you on knowing how to lead and knowing how to follow. And for that matter, knowing when to lead and knowing when to follow. So one of the ways, apart from teamwork, you have, of course, compulsory teamwork. You learn how to work in a team. You have staff there, which is happy to give you guidance. But also, you'll find many staff members who are very happy to provide role models of what we call inspirational leadership and mentorship. So, and there are many forms of leadership, and those of you who come from a management background are far more apt at quoting what they are than I am. But I'd like to play this little video from the famous ethnographer Simon Sinek, which talks about what inspirational leadership is and what it means for people. Let's see where this works.
There are leaders and there are those who lead. Leaders hold a position of power or influence or rank, but those who lead inspire us. And whether they're individuals or organizations, we follow those who lead not because we have to, but because we want to. And we follow those who lead not for them, but for ourselves.
So what we'd like to do in the business school is provide opportunities to show leadership. And provide opportunities to work with staff members in projects, in curriculum, so that they have then the ability to see what leadership is like. And many people have never led before. So the opportunity to try something out on a small scale, on a larger scale, that's something really important for us in the business school that we'd like to be able to afford our students. It's one of the reasons why Paul and myself started up business school broadcasting, so that we can provide a safety net for students, but also give them the ability to try something, to try to lead, and to try new things within the confines of the university. So perhaps we'll to finish off, we'll pass over to Matilda and Dirty, to ask them about their experiences of leadership. Go ahead, Matilda.
All right. So I guess, and I did speak briefly with Jason before, and he pointed out that I guess being an entrepreneur or starting your own thing is one of the many ways of being a leader. And through my studies, I've definitely been given that opportunity to both, and as the president of BSB for a while there, and as well just in day-to-day subjects in university life, being given that opportunity to step up, to maybe even when you're not feeling super confident, but knowing that you're in that safe environment, and then gaining feedback from whether it's your peers, from your teachers, maybe from someone who comes to a presentation or wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and then feeling, I guess, reinforcing that confidence in your own leadership ability that then allows you to then step out of your comfort zone a little more, and step out a little more, and then step out a little more, and then step out a little more. Next minute can go anywhere. But I definitely think that being able to have that opportunity to present, and also to have really, really strong, good mentors, lecturers, other tutors, I've definitely found that throughout my degree, being able to, I guess, pinpoint certain people that I've developed really good relationships with, who have led me, have then helped to, I guess, inform how I lead and how I conduct myself in those leadership roles. So I really enjoy learning from teachers who are really passionate. So then when I go out, and I use the example of the group fitness stuff, when I go out and I'm leading a class, I really make sure that I'm so passionate about it, but I make sure I'm portraying that. I make sure I'm showing that I'm excited. I make sure it's being inclusive, because to me, being a leader is not about standing up there. It's not about being the dictator. It's not about telling people what to do. It's about, yes, guiding them sometimes, yes, giving support, but first and foremost, it's about inspiring them or supporting them or providing that foundation to help other people to grow. So that's leadership, and they're the lessons I've learned. Teamwork, again, like I said in the cultural competency little chat I had earlier, I definitely think that working through all the university projects, you get to work with people you love that become really good friends, but you also get to work with people that you don't really like and that you don't get along with. And for me, that's been the most valuable lessons that I've really learned. You might have a completely different learning style, a completely different communication style. You might have different cultural backgrounds, but that's the reality of the world that we live in. And it's a really nice thing. It just might take you a little bit of adjusting to get into it. And the earlier that you do that, the more exposure you have. I just think that you're the better for it, because you're just growing as a person. And I just wanted to touch on one subject I had earlier this year. So during our lockdown, it was completely online. So I had a team of 5 people, and for the whole unit, we worked as a 5-person team. And in that team, craziest part is I've never met these people now in person, but I feel so close and connected to them. And doing that through the university subject, we just made sure that we used Zoom. And I guess this is going a bit back to that productivity through technology that you touched on earlier. But we learned, so we had a weekly team meeting over Zoom. Everyone's video was on, we're communicating. It was almost like we're in the same room. Then we would have a chat. We used Messenger, you could use whatever. So we're having that ongoing communication. We used emails, we used Google Sheets, we had shared notebooks. And you're getting that whole collated learning that's working through there. And for me, that was probably one of the most valuable teamwork university experiences I've had. And that's being in the COVID environment, because without that, you might see them, you're like, okay, guys, we'll see you next week. Whereas here, we had that constant communication, constant feedback, constant learning, and constant growth. And you just get to know each other so much more. So I think some people are like, oh, you're missing out on the communication. You're missing out on seeing people. I feel like in certain ways, you're actually closer. You're actually getting more of a connection, because now it's not so weird to ask them to join your Facebook chat or like, hey, what's your number? Whereas maybe you've got to wait till like week 6 or week 8, or maybe it's end of semester and you're like, oh, we should hang out. Whereas this way, you've got that from the get-go and you're really able to get to know each other and support each other. I really found that as well. And definitely with learning, collating notes that you could share, just so much better. It really enriched my learning as well, being able to work as a team in that way.
Wonderful.
All right, over to you, someone else.
Turkey?
I agree with what Matilda said. I mean, university really builds a foundation with all the group projects and the presentations they give to us, and when we form a team. A very unique thing that, I like to share an experience was that there's a student financial news as a part of BSB that we used to do, and we have to shoot that in studios. But since we were not allowed to do that anymore because of the lockdown, one of the unit gave me an opportunity to shoot a work from home student financial news. And the teammates and the people who registered for that, I never met them. But when I had to work with them, the kind of bond that I built up with them through just shooting a financial news online was like impeccable. I mean, I still have a chat with those people, and we had no resources. Still, we had the zest to put out the financial news over there. We worked as a team. I took a lead, and that was a very successful venture that we had.
Yeah, I thought I'd just add something here as well, which is I'm always very interested in people and how people interact and what sort of characteristics make people good leaders. And I read a study. This was many years ago, back when I first started working, but it's a study that really stuck with me for a very long time until now. And the study actually looked at leaders in the military. So the military is a good place to study for leadership because it's very homogenous, unlike looking at corporations, for example, which are much more heterogeneous and much more difficult to study. So they looked at military leaders and they looked at outcomes, which included things like productivity, the satisfaction of the troops under these leaders, whether they were happy, their sort of outcomes, whether they were retained in the military or they decided to leave, and all these other metrics, which you associate with positive leadership. And they actually found that a lot of the traditional notions that we have of leaders is actually not correct. Many people think that leaders need to be strong. They need to have a presence. They need to be able to control things. They need to be a commander. All of those notions are actually very low down the characteristics that made a good leader. And I'm sort of a little bit annoyed actually that Matilda stole the word that they quoted as being the most important characteristic of a leader, which is inspirational. They found that of all the leaders that achieved the best possible outcomes, the characteristic that they had the most in common was that they were all voted by the people under them to be able to inspire. And what does inspire mean? It just means that they're able to bring out the best of the people that they work with. So a good leader is someone who's able to take the strengths of the people that they're working with, draw out those strengths, and make sure that those people are as happy and as productive as possible. That's what being a good leader is all about. And I think it's so important that we recognize that leadership is a skill that we can learn, and that a lot of these skills actually come from kindness. And if we're kind to others and we practice and we learn how to be a good leader through our experiences at university, that's what we're going to carry with us into the workforce.
Wonderful, everybody. Now, we've obviously gone a little bit over time, but hopefully it's time well spent. You can tell we've all really enjoyed spending this time with you. And thank you very much for spending your
Jason,
time with us.
can I have a last question?
Please. We're actually gonna
I'm being the most
please.
idiotic guy, I know.
Questions.
But okay,
Go ahead.
so I have the 2 questions basically. So does the master's course is really good enough to do, or we should just opt for the jobs and all? So that's the first question. And the second question is, like you said, that in companies and all, cover letter or the CVs are the most important thing that matters, not the grades and all. But does the university matters, that from which university you're doing? So these are the 2 questions.
Yeah, they're very, very broad questions, Karan. So let me touch briefly on the first one, which is, so could you remind me again what your first question was?
Is master's really necessary, or is it good to do a master's or a PhD program, or is only doing a bachelor's is much enough for them?
So It's a very personal question, and I'll answer from my personal opinion. My personal opinion, and irrespective of what you're doing, is to ask yourself, what is your objective? So if your objective, for example, is to enter a particular career where a master's isn't necessarily needed, then I would say, don't worry about the master's. I'll give you an example. Lots of students in banking and finance are very interested to go for investment banking, which is one of the most highest paid careers. And the students who go for investment banking would not do a master's degree, they would do honors, because the investment banks regularly headhunt the top honors students in the campuses in Australia. So I would say that what's your objective? Now, for other students and for those of us considering a master's, we had lots of questions about, should I do a master's of data analytics? What about a master's
Business
of banking and
analytics.
finance,
My
business
mind is in
analytics?
business analytics.
So again, they serve different purposes. For example, a master's of banking and finance is for those who've never done banking before, whereas a master's of applied finance is for those who already have done a bachelor of banking, but are interested to specialize and go further. So again, that serves a very different purpose. So for example, an engineer, I had a friend of mine who was an engineer and he got tired of engineering. He liked finance. So he did a master's of banking and finance, and that enabled him to enter the banking and finance career. And because he was excellent at coding, he had no problems and no worries. So my answer to you is, what's the objective? And then do that which achieves the objective. Now, your second question was about, does the university matter? Does the university matter? Yes. We live in my opinion, we're human beings. Yeah. If you come from a better university, for example, if this were Harvard University and not Monash University, and you had a degree from Harvard, I think it would be automatically more prestigious. It would carry more weight than a degree from Monash University.
No, but Jason, sorry to interrupt you, but I've seen in India it really matters. But I've talked to many of my relatives living up in Australia. I've been to Australia too in 3 years back. So I just figured it out that people say that generally in foreign countries, okay, 1 or 2 universities really matter that are in top 10 or top 20 in the world. But rest is just that you do from any of them, it doesn't matter a lot. It's just that the grades or the cover letter is set by the Dhriti or Matilda.
Again, I think it depends on the institution that you're coming from, the career that you're interested to go into. So broadly speaking, if you picked, for example, the lowest ranked university in Victoria, and you compared that to the top 2 ranked universities in Victoria, Melbourne and Monash, for example, well, obviously that has some weight to it. Yeah. But again, you could be from the very lowest ranked university, but then after that, if, for example, if I were a recruiter and Matilda and Dhriti, I was sitting here listening to Dhriti and Matilda speak, I don't care what university they're from. I'm going to hire them on the spot. So again, Matilda's really happy, but it does have an impact. But ultimately, I would say, and very often it's a matter of circumstance. Some people may be able to afford a better university. Some people may not be able to afford a better university. So my personal opinion is that your set of circumstances are very unique to yourself. I would always suggest that you go for the very best university that suits you, that suits your frame of mind. And when you're there, take advantage of those opportunities. Now, we do that all the time. We say, hey, everybody, let's get active. Let's turn on our videos. Let's get started. We have mechanisms in place, but at the same time, we can only reach halfway. We need the students to basically shake our hands and to clap with us. So yeah, that's how I'll respond.
Can I just add something on that? I just noticed, because you were drawing in our points about the cover letter being really important. Yes, that is important, but your grades still do matter. You know, your cover letter's going to get you in there. Yeah. But I just wanted to, because I was like, oh, no. You still need to try. You still need to get those grades.
That I know.
Cool. And the other thing
so in Australia, as such, I want to go up for Masters in Business Analytics. So what do you, as a staff member or as a student, Dhriti or Matilda, what do you think that what's the career growth for business analytics, and is it up in Australia or still a budding career, I must say?
I could probably answer this given I'm an econometrician. So I used to work as a data analyst for the Australian government before I started teaching. And my PhD is in econometrics. So I have quite a good sort of finger on the pulse of that industry. I think data analytics and I'll just call it data science in general, because that includes more broadly anything
What is the
that has to do with
difference
data.
in business I'm looking for business analytics. So is there any basic difference?
They're all just terms for the same thing. It all just means how to use data to make decisions. And I'll use the term broadly. Data analysis, data analytics, business analytics. It all just means how to use data to make decisions. Is one of the fastest growing fields of the 21st century. And why is that? If you look at the amount of data that we've collected, and there's charts on this, you'll see that the data that we've collected is been growing exponentially over the past 10 years, not linearly, but exponentially. And that's because we spend so much time on the internet, where it's so easy to get data on what your browsing habits are, what you want to buy, what you want to sell, so on. And it's so easy to conduct surveys. Beforehand, if you wanted to conduct a survey, you'd have to hand out flyers, which no one would return. You have to call them up, which people will hang up on you. Whereas now it's like a pop-up button, rank us out of 5 stars. And you're just like, I'm just going to rank it anyway because I want this to go away, right? So the amount of data that we're able to collect has been growing exponentially. And I know people who are working in industry, and one of my good friends is actually working as a marketing analyst. And he was telling me that the way of doing marketing of old, which is a very strong focus on advertising, is practically dead now. And all that they do in marketing is they crunch all of these pieces of information, this data that they get from people's browsing habits that you can actually buy. You can buy this data by the terabyte, and you pay for it. And they crunch it through the algorithms and their models, and they decide, okay, so this particular person, I'm going to send this advertisement to them. Or maybe you signed up to an email. Why does eBay and all your other marketplaces that you sign up to with the newsletters, why do they always seem to market, Amazon is a prime one, why do they always seem to market the products that you're thinking about buying, right? They can read your mind, and that's all because of data. So people who are working in those fields, it's in huge demand. And I actually have a friend who recently left a very prestigious job in a major bank to go work for Amazon Australia as a data analyst. So there's huge growth potential in that. Now, that being said, though, I do think that it's important to recognize what a career in data is going to be like and what it's about. When you're a data analyst, your job is going to be how to use data to help people make decisions. So the things that you're going to learn is very broad, and I think that's fantastic. So when you do a degree in data analytics or business analytics, you're going to be learning a lot of business, you're going to be learning a lot of computer science and coding and working with data itself, and you're going to be learning a lot about interpretation too. And one of the things that I tell my students when I teach statistics and data classes is that the difference between a good statistician and a bad statistician is not technical ability, because anyone can develop technical ability very quickly. You read a book, you watch a video, and you know how to do these new techniques. You're not doing state-of-the-art research. You're doing techniques which have been known for many years. So all these are well-established tools, but it's your ability to be able to take a model and the output of a model and to wrangle it into a form that executives can understand. Right? If you're a marketing analyst, your job is not just to analyze data, but it's to be able to analyze data and gain the insights that you can then say to the executives, hey, this is where I think we should direct our marketing budget. And if you're able to do that and you combine all those skills together, which a master's degree in business analytics will definitely help you to do, you're on the right path to a huge booming industry. I think
and
that
those people go on to be CFOs.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking up to.
Yeah. Just go onto LinkedIn and type in data or statistics or analytics onto LinkedIn, and you'll see that there's thousands and thousands of jobs. It's booming, absolutely booming.
So as you said that there's no basic difference between all the three, then why are the three courses being taught up separately?
There are differences.
Why isn't
Okay. There are differences, and the difference.
Actually, just in the sake of interest of time, I think we'll continue on here, everybody. But with that, everyone, we're going to draw our presentation to a close. Thank you so much for coming. We've got a couple of polls left for you. One is just to give us your qualitative feedback. How did you find the presentation today? So that's the final poll where you can just type in some qualitative feedback for us. And give us that feedback. But also there's an exit poll, which is quantitative, and that's the exit poll in progress. You can just quickly fill that in for us as well too. And so with that, everybody, we'd like to thank you so much for coming. We're very, very happy to hang around and answer whatever questions you have. If you'd have some private questions for us, we're more than happy to help you out. We can actually organize breakout rooms where we can have a chat to you privately. But with that, everybody, we'll officially draw things to a close. I've really enjoyed the session. And you can see here, if you're thinking about what are the best students, the best type of educators that you can find at Monash University. I'm so proud to be able to bring them to you today. With that, everyone, thank you so much for coming. It's been an absolute total pleasure. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks,
And yeah.
everyone. Stay safe.
Questions, go ahead.
Yeah, Karen, if you
okay.
wanted to continue the
Okay.
discussion, yeah.
Maybe
Yeah,
maybe you
please,
could take
please
her
go
out
ahead.
into a breakout room and continue that.
Yeah, maybe in a few minutes, Karen, we'll give everyone else a chance to ask some questions, and then we'll come back to that in case anyone else was interested too, because I know that's a very popular field.
Yeah, definitely.
Does anybody have any other questions? Feel free to put it in chat or feel free to ask. Stephanie, I think Stephanie is still around. Hi, Steph.
No, she's not.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, Jason.
Oh, she is.
And
Okay.
Paul. Yes, I am.
So if you've got questions about administration, Steph has been wonderful in answering lots of administration questions about different sorts of degrees. And if you have those questions, feel free to ask as well too.
Yeah, hi, this is Divya.
Go ahead, Divya.
Yeah, I have a question. First thing is, yes, I'm glad to say that I have received offer for Master of Business from Monash University. I'm yet to decide on the specialization, whether it is international business or financial and risk management. So the first thing is, I got clarified that this Master of Business is equivalent to MBA. And also I have cross-checked the courses of MBA and Master of Business. It is almost the same, and however for this course it depends on the specialization that we choose. My query is, one thing is the employment prospects of this course, and the second thing is, recently university has provided a new study option for this course, that is November 2020 intake. We can attend online classes on from 2nd November onwards. Yes, it's good that online classes will be, if I choose this option, I can fast forward my degree, and other benefit is I can save my living expenses. But by doing so, we can't get the university experience, right? Of course. However, worldwide, all students, each and every student is undergoing the same. So we don't know when will this pandemic end. We don't know about the vaccine and etc. regarding the pandemic. So if we lose the university experience, if we sit online classes for the next 6 months or 10 months, then yeah, my concern is about the university experience and the exposure. Yes, international exposure we can lose, right?
Thanks for the excellent question, Diva. I think perhaps I can put forward to Paul and Jason in terms of your last question about virtual learning, which applies to all the courses, not just for Master of Business, in terms of how we approach that. And I think Paul has mentioned, so has Jason, in terms of how we're pivoting the face-to-face learning to online learning. I'll put it over to Paul and Jason and then I'll answer your questions after that.
Sure. Well,
Yeah.
I guess I'll just quickly start off by saying it depends on what you mean by the university experience. I will admit, first of all, of course, during the pandemic, you're not going to be able to actually come to Melbourne. And I know that for a lot of students studying overseas, a big part of that is just so that they can go abroad and explore a new city and see what it's like to live in a completely different place, make new friends, take a big long holiday, basically. Sure, you're not going to be able to do that. But then again, neither are we, right?
Yeah, we can't leave our houses either, so don't worry.
But everything else about the actual university experience is just the same, if not even better. And we've learned so much from moving things online that that you're not going to be the first cohort of students coming in and experiencing us fumbling around and figuring out things for the very first time. We've developed a very well-oiled product by this stage. Everyone's been through a lot in terms of online education and developing our own personal way of delivering the classes. And just like with Jason and I've been saying this entire time, we ensure that we actually take the best aspects of the classroom experience and then bring them to the virtual classroom. So in terms of the actual educational experience that you're going to get, you're still going to get exactly the same quality of education. You're still going to get the opportunity to talk to all of your students that you would normally otherwise would get, and everything else that's extracurricular will still be going ahead. So, Jason?
Yeah, sorry, I'm
Yeah.
actually replying also to questions as well. Stephanie, you wanted to say something?
No, I guess to your other aspect of your question, in terms of the difference between a Master of Business and Master of Business Administration, they are quite different. On the surface level, many may mistake or see that as similar. The MBA program at Monash is designed for students or prospective students who have had at least 3 years of work experience, of which 1 year has to be managerial level. In that, the way it's being approached is to develop your strategic thinking analysis and look at things from a very different perspective. So it doesn't provide you with what you call a typical unit in finance, in marketing, in law, etc., where then you build on the foundation and then look into a specialization. That is what the Master of Business provides you with. So it gives you an in-depth foundation into the business areas and also allows students the specialization to choose from. The MBA program doesn't allow that. You can't choose your units. It's all done in a cohort experience, and they have got 4 modules in which they then work in themes to each of the modules. So the modules could be first on innovation, it could be on analysis, it could be strategic thinking. So everything is then built around those themes in terms of the units and the skills you acquire. At the end of each module, you will have a corporate case whereby students in teams of 4 to 5 work on a live project with a company. So in the Master of Business, which is more typical of a master's course for students who have recently graduated or are new in their profession, who wants to look at upskilling or developing new skills. So the specialization allows them to pick up a specific area. You've mentioned international business is one of them. So in that specialization, students then undertake units specific to that area, but they can still within their course take up internships or corporate projects or even embark on a global study exchange when the economy and all the countries open up. So there's all these options and students have the flexibility to pick and choose units. So they're quite different in the design of the course and in terms of the outcome you want to achieve. So I hope that answers your question in terms of what's the difference between a business and an MBA program. I know many students, especially from the South Asia market, will normally gravitate towards an MBA program straight after their bachelor's degree. MBAs in Australia are very, very different. Most of them, if not all, require you to have at least 2 minimum years work experience post your undergraduate to be able to get into an MBA.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephanie. Yeah, it cleared my question.
So Divya, let me be very positive here. I would like to be very optimistic, and I very much hope that the many stage 3 vaccine trials around the world, at least one, I believe, will be successful, which will then open up, and governments all around the world will be very desperate to return to some semblance of normal life, and that includes international travel, and that includes opportunities for international students to have that traditional university experience. And definitely, Monash University, like every other university, is very eager to return to a face-to-face experience. In fact, we were scheduled to this semester in some limited form until, so yeah. But yeah, personally, I feel very positive about the outcomes. I think which will hopefully we'll get good news at the end of October, end of November, about outcomes of all the stage 3 vaccine trials. Any other questions, please?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Paul and Jason. Thank you so much.
No worries, Divya. Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, hello, this is Kaustubh here.
Kashtuya, please go ahead.
Yeah. Firstly, I would like to thank all the panels for organizing this particular session for banking and finance. Thanks a lot for that. And I would also like to inform that I have received an admit from Monash University for Master of Banking and Finance
Congratulations.
for the Feb 2021 intake. Yeah. So actually, my question is that I have an engineering background, and currently I have 3 years of work experience in a fintech company. So with regards to me starting the Master of Banking and Finance program at Monash University, I would like to know if you can provide some insight regarding do I need to do some prerequisite courses, or to gain some momentum in the core courses of Master of Banking and Finance, or is it required as such? Because I don't have a previous bachelor's background in finance or commerce. So if you could provide some insight regarding that, it will
So
be really helpful.
Maybe Paul, because you're teaching
Yeah.
units in Masters Banking and Finance, so you're the best one to
Yeah,
answer.
yeah, I do. So the unit assumes that you have no prerequisite knowledge in finance. So it's designed for students of all sorts of different backgrounds. We have students from engineering, from science, from arts, and got a student from who'd studied literature coming in as well this semester. So there's a wide variety of different students who end up in a Bachelor of Banking and Finance. One of the more interesting stories was I was having a chat to a student, and I asked her what her bachelor's degree was in, and she said that it was actually in Chinese calligraphy, and I thought that was particularly interesting. Yeah, so she's from China, actually. Yeah, but to answer your question directly, I think that the most important thing that you can do right now, especially if you aren't too familiar with what happens in Australia, is to read up on Australian financial news. I think if you, for example, look at the Australian Financial Review, the AFR, that's a pretty good sort of mainstream Australian finance publication that I would suggest that you have a look at and sort of just keep abreast of what's been going on, because a lot of that sort of stuff forms the central discussion for a lot of the units that we're teaching. And you'll find that just sort of keeping up to date with that gives you stuff that you can then talk about in class, you can talk about with your friends, and just knowing what's going on, involving yourself in the world of finance is going to be hugely important in terms of getting a job. So I think that's where I would start. You don't need to do any prep work. Take your time, enjoy your life, and yeah, enjoy your last semblance of freedom before you embark on that journey.
Wonderful. Any other questions?
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot. Thanks for the insight, Paul. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? If there aren't any other questions, we'll formally close the meeting. And we thank everybody for coming. Karan, if you had some other questions, feel free to, Paul, maybe you could, I'll make you the primary host, and then sure. You could organize a breakout room for yourself. And Karan, if there are any other further questions there. Actually, Karan is a very fortuitous name for Paul. One of his high school friends is named Karan.
Yes.
One of the tutors
our colleagues
for me as well too.
Very common name.
Yeah.
Does it mean anything in Indian? Does it mean any in Hindi? Is it? Does it mean anything?
I don't know myself. Maybe brave. I said I am.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Well,
Just last thing, Jason would like to have a beer with you once in Melbourne.
you know, I as an Australian, you know, my liver can accommodate many beers.
As a Punjabi, mine too.
Yes, my first boss was Punjabi. So yep, we used to every Friday night after work we used to hit it. So absolutely. So yes,
Okay.
we all hope.
I'll just jump in, sorry, before you go to Karen. Just letting everyone know that if we haven't actually answered any of your questions, so you may have further questions you're thinking about, I have posted in the chat the one-on-one course advice sessions. If you'd like to book an appointment, we're happy to speak to you further to that as well. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, everybody. So yeah, I'll be having a debrief with the team. Feel free to hang around if you want. But yeah, so we'll have that debrief, and we'll let Matilda and Dirty go, and we'll come up after that debrief. And if there's anybody left remaining, feel free to you could hit us up for a chat as well too. You know, to me, everybody, this is the best part of my job, being able to connect with students, to be able to chat with you. If you've got, sorry, I think we've had a question. Is that right?
Same question.
Oh, I just reposted.
Oh, great, wonderful. So maybe Paul, you can have a good chat with Ziyao and Karan in a breakout room, and maybe put myself, Matilda, Dirty, and Steph into another breakout room.
Yep. Okay. Sure.
Great. Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks for coming, everybody, and I hope to see you again.
Indeed. Hope to see you again. Take care, everyone.
In Melbourne.
Thanks so much, everyone.
In Melbourne.
Yes, everyone.
Absolutely.
Stay safe.
With a beer in either hand.
No.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys. Thank you. Thanks for coming along.